The millionaire called his pregnant wife boring in front of his mistress. Then she bought out his business that night. They say you never truly know what someone is capable of until they're backed into a corner. For Isabella Warren, a devoted wife expecting her first child, that moment came when her wealthy husband, Ryan, humiliated her in the most unforgivable way, calling her boring in front of his glamorous mistress at a crowded gala. Everyone whispered, some even laughed, but no one truly understood what Isabella had hidden behind her gentle demeanor. Before the night was over, she would orchestrate a move so bold it would leave everyone in shock, because in a single defiant stroke, Isabella Warren set out to rewrite her destiny. From the outside looking in, Isabella Warren lived a fairy tale life. Born Isabella Montgomery, she came from a modest background in small-town Georgia. Through hard work, unwavering determination, and a keen business sense inherited from her grandfather, who once ran a successful trucking company, she'd gained acceptance to a top-tier business school. It was there, at a Harvard alumni event, that she met Ryan Warren, the young millionaire scion of Warren and Moore Holdings. With striking blue eyes and a confident swagger, Ryan had been the ultimate catch. A few months into their whirlwind romance, they married in a private ceremony on Martha's Vineyard. Society pages gushed over the union, calling it the perfect match of promise and pedigree. Isabella soon discovered that while Ryan adored life's grand stage, expensive suits, exclusive clubs, nights at the Ritz-Carlton, he had little patience for her quieter dreams. She liked reading about global economic trends. She wanted to start philanthropic ventures for pregnant women in need, and she sought meaning in every chance encounter. Meanwhile, Ryan thrived on adrenaline. He led his father's empire in property development and tech investments. He lived for the chase stock market highs, new acquisitions, and the dopamine rush of sealing multi-million-dollar deals in glass-walled boardrooms. As the years wore on, that sparkle of early marriage lost its luster. While Ryan hit new peaks, expanding Warren and Moore's portfolio from New York to Singapore, Isabella often felt like she was simply an accessory invited to stand beside him for photo ops, but never truly included. Whenever she voiced her insights, he'd brush them off with a smirk. "That's cute, Isa," he'd say in a patronizing tone, ignoring the fact she'd spent hours researching the viability of an international expansion. One of her biggest regrets was not continuing her own separate professional path. Ryan had urged her to focus on the home, citing he preferred the traditional route of having a supportive wife. Loving him deeply at the time, she acquiesced, in hopes of making him proud. They lived in a breathtaking penthouse on Park Avenue, complete with marble floors, a private elevator, and an indoor garden that Isabella painstakingly nurtured. Despite the extravagance, Isabella struggled with a certain restlessness. She craved genuine connection, a sense of partnership. Her pregnancy, an unplanned but welcome surprise, was supposed to bond them. She imagined it might bring them closer, especially as Ryan had always talked about building a legacy. Yet rather than leaning in, Ryan drifted further away. Board meetings in London turned into spontaneous trips to Dubai. Late-night calls, cryptic text messages, and rumors of his wandering eye reached Isabella's ears. She tried to dismiss them as idle gossip, but a part of her suspected the truth: she was losing him. Now, with their baby due in 4 months, Isabella yearned for stability. She hoped they could become a team, focus on building a family as well as an empire. Instead, Ryan's scornful attitude often surfaced. He'd toss out remarks like, "All you do is read baby blogs," or "You wouldn't understand the thrill of this deal." She never expected her illusions to shatter in such a public and humiliating way, but life has a way of revealing the truth, sometimes in the harshest of spotlights. Ryan Warren's love for high society galas was legendary. He thrived in the swirl of crystal champagne flutes, elegant ball gowns, and whispered deals made between canopies. So, when an exclusive fundraiser at the Metropolitan Museum of Art was announced, backed by major names like Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and even the philanthropic arm of the Rockefeller family, Ryan made sure they were invited. Isabella initially hesitated about attending. At 5 months pregnant, she felt heavier and more self-conscious than usual. However, Ryan insisted, claiming the event would be an opportunity to show solidarity and let everyone know we're still a power couple. Behind the shimmering facade of the gala's theme, Renaissance opulence, something darker lurked for Isabella. Rumors had reached her of a new woman in Ryan's life. Her name fluttered on the lips of acquaintances at the country club, Genevieve Santorini, a supposed business partner from Milan. The few details Isabella managed to glean about Genevieve painted a portrait of a vivacious, striking beauty with a taste for couture, known for hosting lavish parties in Lake Como. Even so, Isabella couldn't fathom how brazen Ryan had become, bringing Genevieve to New York, parading her around in circles that Isabella also inhabited. Was he underestimating the rumor mill entirely? Or did he simply not care anymore? As the gala commenced, wealthy patrons ambled through the museum halls, sipping champagne and discussing their philanthropic endeavors. Isabella walked beside Ryan, wearing a floor-length, midnight blue gown that skimmed her growing belly elegantly. She had her hair pinned up, pearls glistening at her neck, determined to keep her composure. For a moment, she almost believed this evening might pass without drama. Then she caught a glimpse of Genevieve across the room. The woman was taller than Isabella, her dark hair styled in soft waves cascading past her shoulders. Dressed in a form-fitting sequined gown, she stood out like a diamond among rubies. Laughing with her was Carter Green, a hedge fund magnate who occasionally partnered with Ryan. Isabella watched as Carter discreetly signaled to Ryan. Within seconds, Ryan was drawn away from Isabella's side, leaving her standing alone in a swirl of glittering patrons. Anxious thoughts churned in Isabella's mind. She wondered how on earth Ryan could be so callous. Did he plan to introduce Genevieve to the same social circle that had, up until now, recognized Isabella as Miss S. Warren? Isabella's heart pounded. She followed Ryan at a distance, weaving through the crowd until she overheard him bragging to Carter and Genevieve about a newly closed deal in South Asia. Ryan's face glowed with excitement, his posture relaxed in a way Isabella realized he rarely showed around her anymore. Then it happened. Isabella stepped a little too close enough for them to notice her. Carter muttered a polite greeting, but Genevieve only flashed a cunning smile. Ryan stiffened, an expression of annoyance crossing his face. He half-turned toward Isabella, as though she were an afterthought, and uttered the words that would shatter her heart. "Don't mind her, she's gotten so boring ever since she got pregnant." A hush fell over the small group. Even Carter's eyebrows rose in discomfort. Genevieve smirked, sipping her champagne. The band in the distance kept playing, and laughter from other guests filtered through. But in that moment, Isabella felt as if the world had ground to a halt, her cheeks heated with embarrassment. That single word, boring, cut deeper than she could have anticipated. Isabella blinked back tears and forced a polite nod. She refused to crumble in front of these people, refused to give Ryan or Genevieve the satisfaction of seeing her break. Mastering what dignity she could, she excused herself and walked away. But even as she retreated to the powder room, she felt an entirely different heat rising inside her. She didn't know it yet, but that night would mark the turning point of her entire life. Isabella was no stranger to disappointment, but the public nature of Ryan's betrayal was an agony unlike any she'd known. Retreating to a quiet alcove near the museum's courtyard, she tried to calm her trembling hands. Her baby bump felt heavier, a physical reminder of the life growing within a life that would one day know the truth of its father's cruelty if she didn't break free from this cycle. No tears came. Instead, a fierce resolve began to take root. Isabella recalled her grandfather's words, "People will think you're soft, Bella, because you're kind. Show them that kindness isn't weakness." She took a steadying breath, channeling that old sense of determination. Soon enough, an unexpected ally approached her. Thomas Patterson, a retired venture capitalist and longtime family friend, had witnessed the cringe-worthy exchange. His silver hair gleamed under the delicate lights, and concern etched lines across his forehead. "Isabella," he said in a hushed voice, "whatever's going on with Ryan, you don't deserve that." He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Thank you, Thomas," she murmured, "but I have to figure out how to handle this." He hesitated before speaking again. "I know tonight might not be the best time, but there's something I've been meaning to share with you. I've watched you for years, how you conduct yourself, your intelligence, your business acumen. I'm no fortune teller, but I've seen how Ryan underestimates you. If you're ever ready to branch out, to make a move of your own, I might have an opportunity." A flicker of curiosity lit up her eyes. "An opportunity?" He nodded slowly. "There's a private equity fund forming. Names like Valeria Montgomery, Ramaya's private equity. Even some old colleagues from Morgan Stanley are involved. They're looking for a strategic partner, someone with vision. I thought you might be interested." Isabella felt her heart skip. She never considered that she could be more than just Miss S. Warren, especially under the shadow of her husband's empire. Still, the pieces began to fall into place in her mind. Maybe she was allowed to dream bigger than being second fiddle in Ryan's show. And maybe she was more than boring. Thomas gave her his card. "Let's talk soon." Away from watchful eyes, she hid the card in her clutch, just in time. The familiar scent of expensive cologne signaled Ryan's approach. She looked up, noticing his forced smile. "There you are," he said through clenched teeth, trying to maintain an appearance of marital harmony in front of any onlookers. "People are asking for us." Isabella slipped her arm through his, let him guide her back into the main hall, but she felt no warmth from him. Instead, she was replaying his mocking words, "Boring, boring, boring." He'd hammered that label into her soul, and now it echoed in her head like a battle drum, pushing her toward a bold new frontier. She spent the rest of the gala on autopilot, politely smiling through tedious conversations, half listening to Ryan's bragging about future business expansions, scanning the crowd for Genevieve's smug visage. A small part of her wanted to tear that woman's illusions apart. Another part recognized that Genevieve was only a symptom of Ryan's disregard for his wife's worth. The real problem was the man at her side, Ryan Warren, who believed he owned the world and had no qualms about disrespecting the mother of his unborn child. By the time the event wrapped up, with the orchestra playing its final waltz, Isabella had decided that she would no longer be sidelined. If Ryan thought her dull, if he could humiliate her without fear of consequences, he was about to learn how very wrong he was. For months, she had reined in her intelligence, her ambition, all for the sake of preserving their marriage. But that night, the seeds of her defiance took root. She would use every resource, every connection, and every bit of cunning she had. And though she had no idea just how drastically life would change by dawn, Isabella felt one thing deep in her core. She was done playing the docile wife. The Warren penthouse was usually quiet in the early hours of the morning, perched high above the city where traffic noise rarely penetrated. But on this particular night, Isabella's mind buzzed like Grand Central Station at rush hour. She changed out of her gown, letting it pool on the floor before stepping into a comfortable robe. Despite the plush surroundings, Italian velvet drapes, antique sculptures, a crystal chandelier, she felt no comfort in her lavish home. Ryan was locked away in his study, probably reviewing business reports or texting Genevieve. At least, That's what Isabella suspected. The fact that he hadn't even tried to apologize after the gala stunned her. Then again, maybe she shouldn't have been surprised. Ryan thrived on control, and an apology would mean acknowledging fault. There, in the soft glow of a single lamp, Isabella withdrew Thomas Patterson's business card. She turned it over, reading the phone number and email address. Could she dare risk a meeting? She wasn't so naive as to think Ryan wouldn't notice if she started exploring outside ventures. But she also realized this might be her single chance to create a safety net for herself and her unborn child. She slipped the card into the hidden lining of her jewelry box, a place Ryan would never think to look. Resolute, she made herself a cup of chamomile tea. Her baby kicked softly, almost as though in agreement. "Don't worry," she murmured, placing a gentle hand over her belly. "We'll be fine. Mama's got this." Before she could dwell on her next steps, her phone vibrated. A text message flashed from her best friend, Charlotte Liang. Charlotte was a boutique fashion designer who had studied with Isabella back in business school. She had a knack for sniffing out drama before it even made the tabloids. "I heard what happened tonight. Are you okay?" The simple question nearly dissolved Isabella's composure. Tears stung her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. She typed back, "I will be. Let's meet tomorrow at the palace for lunch." As she sent the message, she overheard Ryan's footsteps. She tensed, half expecting him to barge in and pick a fight. Instead, he merely walked past the open doorway with barely a glance. She heard him mutter something about an overseas call, and that was it. No good night, no concern, nothing. Slipping into bed, Isabella thought back to the vow she had made earlier. She wasn't going to be a pawn in Ryan's life anymore, but she also needed to be strategic. If she confronted him head-on about the affair without a plan, he would bulldoze her, or at least try to. As she closed her eyes, a swirl of possible strategies filled her mind. Maybe she could gather financial intel. Maybe she could meet with Thomas Patterson in secret. Maybe she could launch a business with Charlotte. The details were still hazy, but one thing was clear. She needed a plan that outsmarted Ryan at his own game. The night wore on, and sleep came in fits. Dreams morphed into nightmares of empty bank accounts and cold boardrooms. Yet every time her child stirred within her, she felt a surge of courage. She clung to one thought: she wasn't alone in this fight. Her unborn baby was with her, and that was reason enough to stand strong. The next day, at the Lot New York Palace's elegant cafe, Isabella and Charlotte sat at a table near a towering floral arrangement. The soft chatter of affluent clientele created a gentle hum. Waiters, dressed in crisp uniforms, glided between tables. For a moment, the grand decor reminded Isabella of her old dreams. Dreams of forging an empire alongside Ryan, building philanthropic efforts, traveling the world. Now, those visions felt tarnished. Charlotte reached across the table, gently clasping Isabella's hands. "Spill it. Tell me everything," she said, concern laced with a fierce loyalty that had always buoyed Isabella's spirits. Isabella recounted the gala humiliation, Ryan's dismissive comment, and the painful certainty that he was having an affair with Genevieve Santorini. Charlotte's eyes flared. "That's beyond cruel. Does he even realize how lucky he is? He doesn't care," Isabella admitted, swirling her untouched coffee. "But I'm done being his doormat. Last night changed everything." Charlotte nodded slowly. "You have resources, Isa. You're not some unskilled trophy wife." A faint smile curved Isabella's lips. "I may have more resources than you think." She proceeded to tell Charlotte about Thomas Patterson's offer. "He wants me on board with a new private equity fund. I don't have every detail, but if I play my cards right, I could build something powerful, maybe even outmaneuver Ryan if he tries to leave me high and dry." Sounds like a plan, Charlotte said, taking a sip of her tea. But Ryan is cunning. Don't let him see it coming. Gather information, especially about his finances. Men like him think they can hide their tracks, but they always slip up somewhere. Isabella exhaled. You're right. I need to be strategic. Ryan never gave me a formal role at Warren and Moore, but I have some access logins, passcodes, older financial statements. If I carefully look through them, I might find something. Just be cautious, Isa, Charlotte warned. He's not going to take kindly to you having any leverage. They chatted more about the future, about the baby, and about the prospect of independence. Then, as they were finishing dessert, Charlotte's expression turned hesitant. There's something else you need to know. Word on the street is that Ryan's next big deal involves shady partnerships in Eastern Europe. My friend who works at the Department of Justice mentioned something about potential legal implications. If Ryan's stepping into muddy waters, it could crumble the entire Warren and Moore empire. A chill ran down Isabella's spine. If Ryan was delving into questionable territories for higher profits, that meant the foundation of his wealth might be on shaky ground. She realized that if she wanted to protect herself and her child, she needed to act fast. If the government swooped in with investigations, she could be left with nothing unless she had her own fortress of assets. Finishing her cappuccino, Isabella felt an uncharacteristic surge of adrenaline. The once shy woman who allowed her husband to overshadow her was awakening, replaced by someone with a keen survival instinct. She looked at Charlotte, a determined glimmer in her eyes. I'm going to accept Thomas's offer, she said, and I won't just survive Ryan's betrayal, I'll rise above it. Charlotte lifted her teacup in a mock toast. To your victory, then. They clinked cups softly. In that moment, Isabella felt the winds of change swirl around her. She still had to figure out the details, but for the first time in a long while, she felt hope flickering in her chest like a lighthouse beacon guiding her through the storm. That afternoon, Isabella returned to the penthouse, greeted only by silence and the faint hum of the city below. Ryan had left a note on the kitchen counter, an impersonal message explaining he'd be in meetings until late. She felt a mixture of relief and resentment. At least his absence provided her the time she needed to dig deeper. She headed straight to the Home Office. Though Ryan had his own study, he rarely ventured into the smaller office Isabella used for personal correspondence and philanthropic planning. She slid open the laptop, entered a password she knew Ryan used for lesser accounts, an old family dog's name spelled backward. Lucky for her, Ryan was arrogant enough not to change his passwords often. Her heart pounded as she clicked through Warren and Moore Holdings' internal server, rummaging in the digital archives. She looked for any hint of the rumored Eastern Europe deal. Sure enough, in a folder labeled Overseas Developments Q4, she unearthed a subfolder titled Confidential Derrick Projects. The documents, though riddled with financial jargon, revealed partnerships with shell companies. Isabella recognized enough to see they were funneling funds through lesser-known territories, raising red flags for money laundering or sanctions violations. She didn't understand every nuance, but she understood enough. Ryan was playing with fire. Her baby kicked, as if sensing her tension. She inhaled slowly, steeling herself. Instead of panicking, she methodically downloaded the files onto a USB drive. If the Department of Justice, or SEC, launched an investigation, these documents could be key. If nothing else, they would leverage a card she could play if Ryan tried to ruin her financially or deny her child support. She was so engrossed in her discovery that she almost didn't notice her phone vibrating. Thomas Patterson's name lit up the screen. She answered quietly, her voice hushed. "Isabella, good to hear from you," Thomas said. "I hope last night didn't weigh you down too much." She forced a light laugh, though her nerves were frayed. "It's definitely put things into perspective." "About your offer, can we meet?" Thomas paused, then answered, "Certainly. How about tomorrow at my office on Fifth Avenue? My associates will be there, but we can talk privately first. That's perfect, Isabella replied, feeling her resolve crystallize. After the call, she ejected the USB drive, stashing it in a concealed compartment in her closet. She locked the office, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Every step she took down the hallway felt like crossing a bridge she could never return from. Yet, she felt empowered for the first time in years. That night, she carefully laid out her outfit for the meeting, an elegant but conservative dress that conveyed seriousness. Then she tried to sleep, though sleep wouldn't come easily. She kept envisioning the confrontation that might loom with Ryan. How would he react if he knew she'd uncovered his secrets? What would happen when she eventually filed for divorce, or if she decided to stand her ground in his business world? Yet a quiet strength settled in her, nurtured by the life moving inside her belly. She reminded herself that she was no longer just living for herself, but for her child, and that thought gave her the courage she needed. By dawn, Isabella Warren had made her decision. She would no longer be boring, subdued, or overshadowed. She was going to carve out her own destiny, no matter the cost. Thomas Patterson's office on Fifth Avenue overlooked Central Park. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a sweeping view of lush greenery against the steel and glass skyline. Isabella felt a sense of awe as she stepped inside the polished reception area. Large, abstract paintings adorned the walls, and the scent of fresh lilies filled the air. A stylish receptionist escorted her to a private conference room where Thomas waited, accompanied by two other individuals, Valeria Montgomery, a poised woman in her mid-40s with an impressive track record in tech investments, and David Ramirez, founder of Ramirez Private Equity. Both greeted Isabella warmly. She sensed curiosity in their eyes, as if they wondered how this Warren wife might contribute to their venture. Thomas introduced everyone, then suggested they begin with a private conversation between him and Isabella. Valeria and David, exchanging knowing smiles, exited to another room. Once they were gone, Thomas's friendly demeanor shifted slightly to one of serious business. "I've followed your career before you married Ryan," Thomas began, leaning forward. "You were top of your class, co-led a startup project that later got acquired by a major marketing firm. Then, you seemed to fade from the professional scene. But I always saw potential in you, Isabella." Her heart fluttered at the validation. "I appreciate that. I'm ready to step back into the business world, but I need more details." "What exactly is this fund about?" Thomas nodded. "We're forming a private equity fund aimed at acquiring undervalued tech companies with strong growth potential. We've already identified a handful of targets in Silicon Valley and emerging markets. The plan is to build them up and either go public or sell to larger conglomerates. The returns could be massive." He paused, studying her expression. "But this isn't just about money, is it?" Isabella pursed her lips. "Honestly, no. I need security for my child's future, and I'm worried that Ryan, my husband, may be involved in questionable deals. If the government cracks down on him, I want to have my own resources. I've dedicated years to supporting him, but he's shown me how little he values me." Thomas's eyes softened. "I understand, and I'd like to help. But to do that, I need your expertise. You've got a network of contacts from your Harvard days. You're also a Warren, like it or not. That name opens doors. But I suspect you want to stand on your own 2 feet, not just rely on that name." "That's exactly it," Isabella said. She felt a surge of resolve. "I want to invest, to negotiate, to be involved at the decision-making level." Thomas slid a stack of papers toward her. "This is an initial partner agreement. Read it over. We're prepared to offer you a seat at the table, one of the founding partners. You'll need to invest capital. If that's an issue, we can arrange some creative financing. Valeria and David trust me on this, and I trust you." Isabella scanned the document. The language was straightforward enough. Her role would entail due diligence, business strategy, and an optional buy in overtime. It was a chance to build something substantial, something that could outlast any personal turmoil in her marriage. Before she could reply, Thomas added gently, "I won't ask about your personal finances, but if you need help, I can front part of your share. You can repay me later once the fund gains traction." Gratitude welled up within her. "Thank you, Thomas. I believe I can manage." She thought of the hush money Ryan had given her after a minor public scandal last year, money she'd hidden in a separate account. She had once felt guilty about it. Now she saw it as seed capital for her escape. She extended her hand, and Thomas shook it firmly. "Welcome aboard, partner." A tingle of excitement coursed through her. In that moment, Isabella envisioned a future where she no longer cowered under Ryan's shadow, but stood as an equal in the world of high finance. She hadn't yet unveiled the next steps of her plan, but this was the foundation. She knew there would be obstacles: Ryan's anger, the mistress flaunting her presence, possible legal battles. But for the first time since she met Ryan Warren, Isabella felt truly alive. Days turned into a week, and Isabella found a newfound purpose. She spent hours poring over investment proposals, interfacing with Valeria and David, and strategizing how best to cultivate the budding private equity fund. It was invigorating, like rediscovering a part of herself she'd lost after marrying Ryan. Yet it wasn't all smooth sailing. Ryan's mood had grown mercurial, his temper flaring over the slightest inconvenience. He hurled complaints about incompetent staff, slow project timelines, even his tailor messing up his suits. Late-night phone calls with an overseas partner left him irritable. Isabella suspected this had to do with the Derrick projects and the shady dealings in Eastern Europe. She kept her distance, aware that each day the tension in their penthouse thickened. Genevieve Santorini's presence loomed like a dark cloud. Pictures surfaced on social media: Ryan and Genevieve dining at an exclusive restaurant, entering a Broadway show, even sightings at a private lounge. Isabella refused to confront him directly yet. She needed more time to finalize her own position, but each photograph, each mocking commentary in gossip columns ignited a fresh wave of hurt and anger. One evening, she was in the penthouse living room, poring over her new fund's budget forecasts, when Ryan strode in, jacket slung over his arm. He barely offered a greeting before noticing the spreadsheets displayed on her laptop. His brows furrowed. "What are you doing?" She refused to shrink. "I'm reviewing some investment opportunities. I'm considering backing a startup." He barked a humorless laugh. "You? Backing a startup? With what capital? My money?" The derision in his voice was palpable. She calmly closed her laptop. "I have my own resources." He rolled his eyes. "Sure you do. Listen, if you're bored with your pregnant housewife routine, I can understand. But don't try to play in the big leagues, Isabella. This is a world you don't know how to navigate." His words stabbed at her pride, but she remained composed. "You'd be surprised at what I can navigate," she said. "After all, I studied business too." Ryan took a step closer, looming over her. "Don't test me, Isa. I'm juggling enough stress. The last thing I need is you meddling in business you can't handle." A flash of defiance sparked in her eyes. She wanted to fling accusations at him, throw the evidence of his illicit deals in his face, but she held back. Instead, she simply rose from her seat. "We'll see," she said softly, her voice steady. His lips curled in annoyance. For a moment, she thought he might say more, but a phone call interrupted them. He glanced at the caller ID and muttered, "This is important." "Don't wait up," before disappearing into his study. The door slammed behind him. Isabella exhaled, her heartbeat quickening. A swirl of thoughts and emotions raged inside her. She knew a storm was coming. Ryan was suspicious, and Genevieve's hold on him was strong. But instead of feeling fear, Isabella felt a surge of determination. She placed a hand on her belly. If Ryan thought she was boring, he had no idea what she was capable of. The reckoning was only a matter of time. The final blow came at a high-profile charity banquet hosted at the Plaza Hotel, a rival event to the Met Gala, but equally lavish. This time, it was for a children's hospital, and Isabella had contributed a sizable donation in her own name, separate from Ryan's philanthropic efforts. Her plan was to keep building her identity as a capable, independent figure in high society circles. She'd arrived alone, wearing a flowing emerald gown that accentuated her pregnant form rather than hiding it. Heads turned as she walked in. She could sense the curious glances, some likely fueled by the rumors swirling around her marriage. Still, she held her head high. Near the silent auction area, she spotted Ryan with Genevieve. They stood close, speaking in hushed tones. Ryan looked tense, and Genevieve seemed to be coaxing him about something. Isabella felt a pang in her chest, but she refused to wilt under the heartbreak. Instead, she moved gracefully around the banquet hall, greeting acquaintances, making small talk about the charities she was supporting, and subtly hinting that she was involved in an exciting new venture. As dinner concluded, an auctioneer took the stage, encouraging the wealthy patrons to bid on exotic trips, vintage wines, and exclusive art pieces. To Isabella's shock, Ryan and Genevieve waltzed onto the dance floor as the band began a slow tune. It was a brazen display, their bodies too close for a simple work-partner relationship. Whispers rippled through the crowd, some supportive of the gossip spectacle, others pitying Isabella. She stood at the edge, fists clenched, a swirl of rage and humiliation gripping her. The final straw? The moment when Ryan spun Genevieve around, their eyes locked with an intensity Isabella hadn't seen him show in years. No subtlety, no shame. He was effectively announcing to the world that Genevieve was his main companion now. Something inside Isabella snapped. She marched to the stage, motioning for the auctioneer to pause. The crowd hushed. Even Ryan and Genevieve stopped, confusion registering on their faces. Isabella gripped the microphone, her heart pounding like thunder. "I apologize for the interruption," she began, voice quivering yet resolute. "I'd like to increase my pledge to the Children's Hospital to $1 million. A murmur of awe swept through the hall. Isabella continued, "I believe in supporting those in need. It's something dear to my heart as I prepare to become a mother." Her gaze locked with Ryan's. The shock on his face was priceless. He knew that donation was separate from his accounts, from his oversight. A smattering of applause grew, culminating in a standing ovation. Isabella handed the microphone back, stepping off stage to approach Ryan and Genevieve, who stared at her in bewilderment. "Quite a pledge," Ryan muttered. "Where did you get that kind of money?" Isabella smiled serenely. "Don't worry about it." Then she turned to Genevieve, looking her up and down. "Enjoy the dance." With that, she pivoted and walked away, leaving Ryan and Genevieve stunned amidst the swirling crowd. The entire scene felt surreal, a sudden shift of power, a crystallization of her new reality. But Isabella wasn't finished. Tonight was the night she would teach Ryan that she was anything but boring. She'd spent weeks finalizing an intricate plan, and if all went as expected, she would buy out a controlling stake in one of Warren and Moore's critical divisions, an audacious move that would rock Ryan's entire empire. Isabella left the Plaza Hotel immediately after her dramatic pledge. She hailed a black SUV waiting for her at the curb. Inside, Thomas Patterson and Valeria Montgomery were seated, laptops open. Their expressions were tense yet excited. The overhead light illuminated the seriousness of the moment. "Are we all set?" Isabella asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Thomas nodded, looking from his screen to her. "Everything is prepared. The final signatures are ready to go. The capital from our new fund has been allocated as we discussed. Once you approve, we'll execute." The plan was bold: use the newly formed private equity fund, along with Isabella's personal capital, to purchase the majority shares in a key subsidiary of Warren and Moore Anderson Tech. Anderson Tech specialized in cybersecurity solutions and had been a steady revenue generator for Warren and Moore for years. Ryan had overlooked its strategic importance, focusing instead on flashier deals. But Isabella knew better. If she controlled Anderson Tech, she would hold enormous leverage in the industry leverage that could rival Ryan's dominance. Valeria pulled up a digital contract on her tablet. All we need is your final e-signature, Isabella. Once that's done, the shares transfer to our holding entity, which you effectively control. With a trembling hand, Isabella scrolled through the contract's final pages. It was surreal. She was about to orchestrate a hostile buyout of her husband's subsidiary while carrying his child. Her mind flicked to the humiliations she'd suffered, the label of boring that had cut so deeply. This was her stand. She pressed her stylus to the screen, signing her name with quiet resolve. Thomas exhaled in relief, as though they'd just crossed a battlefield. "Congratulations, Isabella. You just took control of Anderson Tech." Valeria tapped her tablet. "Transaction confirmed. We'll issue a press release first thing tomorrow, letting the world know about the buyout. Ryan's lawyers will be in a frenzy." Isabella allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. She glanced at her phone. Messages from the banquet were pouring in, some congratulating her donation, others seeking clarification. She noticed one from Ryan. "Where are you? We need to talk." She ignored it. Adrenaline coursed through her veins as the SUV sped through the city streets. From the tinted window, she watched the skyline flash by. The towering buildings that had once felt like prisons, now they seemed like a kingdom she was finally claiming as her own. "Let's call it a night," she said softly. "Tomorrow we face whatever storms come our way." Thomas and Valeria nodded in agreement. She thanked them for their support and stepped out in front of her penthouse building. The doorman politely tipped his hat, opening the door for her. She walked into the marble-floored lobby, clutching her handbag that contained the final legal documents. When she reached her penthouse, she found Ryan there, pacing anxiously. The second he saw her, anger flashed in his eyes. "Where the hell have you been?" he snapped. "And what was that stunt at the banquet? You pledged $1 million as if it was pocket change." She slipped off her coat, meeting his gaze coolly. "I was doing something important. Trust me, you'll hear about it soon enough." He stepped toward her, fists clenched. "Isabella, don't test me. I've had enough of your games." Her lips curved into a mirthless grin. "Likewise. We can talk about it in the morning. Good night, Ryan." Without another word, she walked into the bedroom and locked the door. Her heart pounded against her chest as she leaned against the wall. She could almost taste Ryan's fury in the air. Tomorrow, everything would change. And for once, Isabella Warren was ready. Dawn broke over the Manhattan skyline, painting the city in shades of gold. Yet the serenity outside was no reflection of the chaos inside the Warren penthouse. Isabella woke early, a flurry of emotions coursing through her. She dressed carefully in a crisp white blouse and a fitted black skirt that accommodated her growing belly. Today, she would face the consequences of her bold move. By the time she stepped into the living room, Ryan was already on the phone, his voice raised, tension etched into every line of his face. On the table, an iPad displayed the morning's financial headlines. Breaking: new private equity fund acquires majority stake in Anderson Tech from Warren and Moore. Shocking coup: anonymous buyer snaps up Anderson Tech. Ryan ended the call with a hiss. He spun around to face Isabella. "Do you have any idea what's going on?" he demanded, eyes blazing. "Someone orchestrated a hostile buyout of Anderson Tech overnight. It's all over the news. Our board is going insane." She calmly sipped a glass of orange juice, savoring the moment. "I might have an idea," she replied, her tone measured. Confusion twisted Ryan's features. "What do you mean?" She set down her glass, meeting his gaze squarely. "It was me," she said simply. His jaw dropped. "You? That's impossible. You don't have the resources. You don't have the—" He broke off, realization dawning. "You used your connections. You've been scheming behind my back." Isabella stood her ground, refusing to be intimidated. "Call it what you want. I invested in a private equity fund that recognized the value of Anderson Tech, something you've taken for granted for years. The deal is done, Ryan. I control Anderson Tech now." He inhaled sharply, color flushing his cheeks. "You can't do this. This is sabotage, betrayal. Is it any worse than what you did to me?" Isabella snapped, her composure wavering under the weight of pent-up anger. "You humiliated me in public, you flaunted your mistress everywhere, and you disrespected me at every turn. You left me no choice but to protect myself." Ryan's eyes flickered with a mixture of fury and shock. He attempted to regain control. "We'll see about that. My lawyers will tear this deal apart. I'll prove you manipulated the board." "Go ahead," Isabella interrupted, her voice rising. "Check the legal documents, the funding sources, everything. It's airtight. Even if you wanted to sue me personally, you'd have to face the entire private equity consortium behind me. You might be good, Ryan, but you're not that good." He raked a hand through his hair, glancing down at her pregnant belly. "So this is your revenge?" A wry smile tugged at her lips. "This is my defense. Consider it a wake-up call. You once said I was boring. Well, I guess you were wrong." A thick silence fell between them. Ryan's breathing was ragged, as if he'd just run a marathon. "What do you want?" he finally asked, desperation tainting his voice. Isabella leaned back against the couch. "I want you to learn that you can't treat people like disposable accessories. That includes me, and most importantly, our child. If you plan to continue down your current path, risky deals, public scandals, humiliating me, don't expect me to stand by and watch." With that, she left him standing there, the echo of her words hanging in the air. For once, Ryan Warren, the unstoppable millionaire, seemed at a complete loss. And Isabella felt a rush of fierce satisfaction, even amidst the uncertainty of what lay ahead. In the days that followed, the shockwaves of Isabella's coup reverberated through New York's business and social circles. Reporters clamored for interviews, rumors circulated about the future of Warren and Moore, and some even speculated about the state of the Warrens' marriage. But Isabella maintained her poise, refusing to comment publicly. She directed inquiries to the private equity fund spokesperson, who skillfully spun the narrative of a forward-thinking acquisition. Ryan, meanwhile, retreated. He cancelled public appearances, avoided hosting his usual lavish parties, and tried unsuccessfully to undo the Anderson Tech deal. Legal teams from both sides clashed, but the contract was bulletproof. Thomas Patterson and his associates had prepared meticulously, ensuring Ryan had no legitimate grounds to challenge it. Genevieve Santorini, for her part, vanished from the spotlight. Rumors suggested that when Ryan's empire showed signs of vulnerability, her affections cooled. She was last spotted boarding a flight to Europe. Isabella felt neither pity nor satisfaction. Genevieve was merely a symptom of Ryan's disregard. The real victory was in asserting her own worth. As the weeks turned into a month, Isabella found herself at the helm of Anderson Tech's transition. She worked closely with a team of engineers, finance experts, and project managers to set new strategies in motion, enhanced data protection services, expansions into new markets. Her baby bump had grown, and though it was challenging to juggle late-night meetings and pregnancy fatigue, she felt invigorated by her purpose. Not everything was smooth. Ryan attempted to freeze her personal accounts, only to discover she had already transferred essential funds. He threatened to remove her from the penthouse, but she calmly reminded him it was partially in her name. Their confrontations were fierce, but Isabella stood firm, always reminding him that any ruthless move on his part would spark an equally potent response. In time, something shifted in Ryan. His anger cooled into a somber acceptance. One afternoon, he arrived at Anderson Tech's new office unannounced. Isabella watched him step into the sleek conference room, the city skyline behind him. There was no arrogance in his posture this time, only weariness. "Isabella," he said, voice subdued, "we need to talk." She nodded, motioning for him to sit. They faced each other across the conference table, the weight of years between them. For a moment, he looked like the young man she'd met at Harvard, a spark of regret in his eyes. "I realize I messed up," he began quietly. "I let my ambition and ego push you away. I never saw you as an equal, even though you always had the potential. And I'm sorry." She studied his face, trying to discern sincerity. A large part of her wanted to hold on to her rage, to remind him of every transgression. But another part, perhaps the part that once loved him, felt the strain of exhaustion. She said nothing, allowing him to continue. "I can't take back what I did," he added, "but I'd like to find a new balance. For the sake of our child, if nothing else." Isabella drew a slow breath. "I don't know if we can ever go back to how things were. And honestly, I don't think I want to." Ryan nodded, a flicker of pain crossing his features. "I understand, but maybe we can move forward in some way. Even if we're not together as husband and wife, we can be partners in ensuring our child's future." She considered his words. There was so much water under the bridge, so many broken vows. Yet, she recognized this might be the start of a more respectful dynamic. "I'm willing to talk about an arrangement," she said softly. "For the baby's sake." Their conversation stretched on, moving from apologies to logistical details of co-parenting, finances and boundaries. By the end, Isabella felt a cautious sense of relief. She wasn't naive enough to trust Ryan completely, but perhaps they could cooperate without hostility. A week later, she served him with legal separation papers, clarifying her intention to raise the child on her own terms. Ryan signed them, albeit reluctantly. The media quickly caught wind of the separation, but Isabella kept her composure. She had a new life blossoming inside her and a new empire to build. She no longer needed Ryan's validation. As her due date approached, she stood on the balcony of the Anderson Tech building, overlooking the city. The wind played with her hair, and she placed a hand over her belly, thinking of the incredible journey that had brought her here. She was no longer the naive girl overshadowed by a powerful husband. She was Isabella Warren, businesswoman, soon to be mother, and a force in her own right. And so ends the unforgettable story of a woman scorned, who refused to accept a fate of complacency. Isabella Warren turned the tables on her unfaithful, condescending husband in the most dramatic way possible by seizing control of a prized piece of his business empire overnight. Her transformation was not just a tale of revenge. It was a testament to her resilience, intelligence, and unwavering dedication to her unborn child's future. Though the road ahead promised challenges, co-parenting arrangements, media scrutiny, and corporate battles, Isabella embarked on it with renewed confidence and hard-earned independence. Call to action. If you found Isabella's journey as riveting as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of extraordinary twists and triumphant comebacks. Your support helps us continue unveiling tales that remind us all of the power that lies in courage, self-respect, and a well-executed plan. Thank you for watching.